At a small cemetery in the countryside, a stray dog appeared from nowhere and quietly took its place beside the coffin of a young girl. No one in the grieving crowd knew the dog, yet it refused to leave, even when the funeral ended. Days later, what the dog revealed would leave the entire town speechless. The sun cast a muted glow over the small town as grey clouds loomed overhead, threatening to burst. The cemetery gates creaked open, allowing a slow procession of mourners to shuffle inside. They carried heavy hearts and tear-streaked faces, all gathered to bid farewell to a young girl who had passed too soon. Her name was Lila, a bright, compassionate teenager who had touched everyone in the community with her kindness. Amid the quiet sobs and rustling of the wind, an unexpected figure emerged. A stray dog, thin and scruffy, with a coat matted from what appeared to be years of neglect. The dog moved with purpose, weaving between the gravestones as if it knew exactly where it was going. Murmurs spread among the mourners as they watched the dog approach the coffin and sit down beside it, lowering its head as if in mourning. "Whose dog is that?" someone whispered, but no one could provide an answer. The funeral continued, but the dog's presence became a quiet focal point. It didn't bark, whine, or cause any disturbance. It simply stayed, its dark eyes fixed on the wooden coffin adorned with white lilies, Lila's favorite flower. Some people thought it might have been Lila's pet, but her family confirmed that they'd never seen the dog before. As the funeral drew to a close, the mourners slowly began to disperse, offering their condolences to Lila's parents. The dog, however, refused to move. It stayed by the coffin even as the first shovelfuls of earth were thrown over it, flinching slightly at the sound, but holding its position. "It's like it's guarding her," one mourner said, wiping away tears. Even when the cemetery emptied and the sun began to set, the dog remained. A few curious passers-by noticed it the next morning, still sitting at the gravesite, its head resting on the freshly packed earth. What was this dog's connection to Lila? Why had it chosen her grave to keep vigil? The answer would come soon enough, and it would change everything. The story behind the dog's sudden appearance began to unravel as whispers spread throughout the town. Those who visited Lila's grave over the next few days noticed the same sight: the scruffy dog sitting vigil, its body unmoving except for the occasional rise and fall of its chest. It would refuse food offered by kind-hearted visitors, only taking small sips of water left in bowls nearby. The cemetery caretaker, Mr. Hargrove, was the first to take special note of the dog's persistence. He was a retired military officer with a soft spot for strays and a deep respect for loyalty. One rainy afternoon, as he made his rounds, he approached the dog cautiously, holding a sandwich from his lunchbox. "Hey there, buddy," he murmured, crouching down a few feet away. "You've been here for days now. Are you waiting for someone?" The dog lifted its head and regarded him with intelligent, sorrowful eyes. It didn't move closer, but didn't flee either, simply lowering its head back onto the ground beside Lila's grave. "Mr. Hargrove sighed, his heart aching at the sight. The dog's matted fur and bony frame suggested it had been living on the streets for quite some time. He left the sandwich nearby and stepped back, watching as the dog finally approached to eat once he was a safe distance away. Word of the dog's vigil spread quickly. Lila's parents, Anna and Mark, were among those most puzzled by its presence. They were still grappling with the immense loss of their only daughter, who had been the light of their lives. Lila was known for her love of animals. She often volunteered at the local shelter and had a knack for befriending even the most timid creatures. "Do you think Lila knew this dog?" Anna asked Mark one evening as they sat together, poring over photo albums of their daughter. "I don't know," Mark replied, shaking his head. "She never mentioned a stray, but if it's here for her, maybe it's a sign." Anna nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. She couldn't shake the feeling that the dog's unwavering presence held some deeper meaning, as though it was Lila's way of sending a message from beyond. Curiosity grew among the townspeople, and soon a local journalist named Clara decided to investigate the mysterious dog. She approached the cemetery with her camera, careful not to startle the animal. As she snapped photos from a distance, Clara noticed something unusual: a faint scar running along the dog's left ear and a tattered red collar barely visible beneath its tangled fur. "Interesting," she murmured to herself. The collar suggested the dog had once belonged to someone, and the scar hinted at a rough past. Clara decided to follow the dog after sunset, hoping it might lead her to some answers. For hours, she waited behind a row of bushes as the dog remained at Lila's grave. Just as she was about to give up, the dog finally rose and began trotting through the cemetery gates, moving with surprising agility for its thin frame. Clara followed at a safe distance, her heart pounding with anticipation. The dog's journey took them through dark alleyways, across quiet streets, and finally to a rundown shed on the outskirts of town. It squeezed through a gap in the wooden planks, and Clara waited outside, listening intently. From within the shed, she heard faint whimpers, soft, high-pitched cries that didn't belong to the dog. Her breath caught as she realized what she was hearing. Slowly, she pushed the shed door open and shone her flashlight inside. There, huddled in a corner, were 3 tiny puppies. Clara's heart raced as the beam of her flashlight illuminated the scene before her. The 3 puppies, barely old enough to open their eyes, whimpered and nuzzled against each other for warmth. Their tiny bodies were frail, their fur patchy and matted. It was clear they had been born into hardship, struggling to survive in the dilapidated shed. The stray dog, now standing protectively in front of the puppies, let out a low growl as Clara stepped closer. Its fierce gaze seemed to say, "These are mine, and I'll protect them at all costs." Clara crouched down, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm not going to hurt them, I just want to help." She placed the flashlight on the ground, allowing the warm glow to spread across the shed without blinding the dog. From this angle, she could see more clearly that the dog's body bore signs of a difficult life. Ribs visible beneath its fur, old scars crisscrossing its legs, and a limp that suggested an unhealed injury. One of the puppies let out a particularly sharp whimper, prompting the dog to turn and gently nudge it with its nose. Clara's throat tightened as she realized the stray was not just a random visitor to Lila's grave. It was a mother, fiercely protecting its vulnerable young. The connection hit her like a lightning bolt. Lila's love for animals, her unwavering compassion. Could it be that this dog had somehow sensed her kindness even in death? Had it chosen Lila's grave as a sanctuary because it felt safe there? Clara's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. She turned to see Mr. Hargrove standing at the shed's entrance, his flashlight in hand. "I figured you'd be out here," he said softly, taking in the scene with a mixture of awe and concern. "What did you find?" "Puppies," Clara replied, her voice thick with emotion. "She's been caring for them all on her own." Mr. Hargrove stepped closer, his weathered face softening as he took in the sight of the small family. "No wonder she's been staying at Lila's grave," he murmured. "She's not just grieving, she's trying to survive." The 2 of them sat quietly for a moment, respecting the mother dog's courage and resilience. But Clara's journalistic instincts soon kicked in. "We need to do something," she said. "They won't last much longer like this. The puppies need food, warmth, medical attention. And the mother needs rest," Mr. Hargrove added. "She's barely holding on herself." The 2 hatched a plan to help the dogs without causing unnecessary stress. Clara would return with supplies, blankets, food, and water, while Mr. Hargrove kept watch to ensure no harm came to the family. As Clara prepared to leave, she hesitated at the shed's entrance. Turning back to the mother dog, she spoke softly. "We'll be back, okay? I promise we'll help you." The dog's eyes met hers for a brief moment, and though it didn't move, Clara felt a flicker of trust in its gaze. Over the next few days, Clara and Mr. Hargrove worked tirelessly to provide for the dog and her puppies. They brought fresh food and clean water daily, gradually earning the mother dog's trust. By the end of the week, the dog allowed Clara to sit near her while she fed the puppies, a significant step forward. It wasn't long before the town began to take notice. News of Clara's discovery spread quickly, and soon donations started pouring in from neighbors who had been touched by the story. Bags of dog food, blankets, and even offers to adopt the puppies filled Clara's small living room. Among those who reached out was Anna, Lila's mother. She arrived at the cemetery one afternoon with a box of supplies in her arms and tears in her eyes. "I want to help," she told Clara. "Lila would have wanted me to." Clara nodded, moved by Anna's determination. Together, they carried the supplies to the shed. where the mother dog greeted them with cautious curiosity. "She's beautiful," Anna whispered, watching the dog as it gently licked one of the puppies. "She's a fighter," Clara replied, "just like your daughter was." As the weeks went by, the mother dog's health improved and the puppies began to thrive. Clara documented their journey in a series of articles, sharing updates with the community. Her readers were captivated by the story of resilience and hope, and many came forward with their own tales of how Lila's kindness had touched their lives. The connection between the dog and Lila remained a mystery, but one thing was certain: the bond was undeniable. Weeks turned into months, and the story of the stray dog and her puppies continued to unfold, captivating the hearts of everyone in the town. The cemetery became a place not only of mourning but of hope, as people came to leave flowers for Lila and bring treats or toys for the dog and her growing pups. The mother dog, now affectionately called Lila in honor of the young girl, had become a symbol of resilience and love in the face of adversity. Clara spent countless hours documenting the progress of the family. Her articles became a hit not just locally but also online, where readers from around the world followed the journey. Donations kept coming, allowing Clara and Anna to provide the best care possible for Lila and her puppies, but not everyone was supportive. One afternoon, as Clara was delivering supplies to the shed, she was confronted by Mr. Hendricks, the cemetery caretaker. His weathered face was set in a scowl as he gestured toward the growing crowd near Lila's grave. "This has gone too far," he said, his voice gruff. "This is a cemetery, not an animal shelter. People are complaining about the noise and the mess." Clara straightened her back, refusing to be intimidated. "With all due respect, Mr. Hendricks, this dog and her puppies have brought more life and healing to this cemetery than anyone could have imagined. If people are upset, maybe they should take a moment to see the good that's come out of this." The old man's scowl deepened, but before he could respond, Anna appeared, her calm presence diffusing the tension. "We understand your concerns," she said gently. "But this isn't just about the dog. It's about honoring my daughter's memory. Lila would have wanted us to help." Mr. Hendricks hesitated, his gaze softening as he looked at Anna. "Fine," he muttered, "but this can't last forever. You need to find a permanent solution." The confrontation weighed heavily on Clara as she returned home that evening. She knew Mr. Hendricks had a point. The shed was not a sustainable home for Lila and her puppies. But what could they do? The thought of separating the family was unbearable. It was during one of her late-night brainstorming sessions that inspiration struck. Clara remembered an abandoned farmhouse on the outskirts of town, a place with plenty of space for dogs to roam and grow. She immediately reached out to her readers, sharing her vision of turning the farmhouse into a sanctuary, not just for Lila's family, but for other stray animals in need. The response was overwhelming. Within days, Clara had secured enough funding to begin the project. Volunteers came forward to help clear out the farmhouse, repair fences, and create a safe haven for animals. Anna threw herself into the effort, finding solace in the work as she helped design comfortable kennels and play areas. As the sanctuary began to take shape, Clara noticed a change in Lila's demeanor. The once cautious dog now greeted her with a wagging tail and even allowed Anna to pet her. It was as if Lila understood that this new place was being built for her and her puppies. One evening, as the sun set over the rolling fields of the farmhouse, Clara watched Lila lead her pups around their new home. The puppies, now strong and energetic, tumbled through the grass, their joyful barks filling the air. Anna stood beside Clara, tears streaming down her face. "This is what Lila would have wanted," she said softly, "a place where love and kindness can thrive." Clara nodded, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. "And it's all because of her. Lila's spirit brought us here." Despite the progress, there were challenges. The sanctuary required constant maintenance, and balancing her work as a journalist with her new responsibilities left Clara exhausted. But every time she saw Lila and her puppies thriving, she knew it was worth it. The community also rallied around the sanctuary, organizing fundraisers and donation drives to keep it running. Children who had been inspired by Lila's story formed a volunteer group, spending their weekends helping to care for the animals. One day, Clara received a letter from a reader in another state. It was from a woman who had recently lost her own daughter and had been deeply moved by Lila's story. Enclosed was a check with a note, "For the sanctuary. Thank you for reminding me that even in our darkest moments, there is light." The letter reignited Clara's determination. She realized that the sanctuary was not just about saving animals, it was about healing hearts and building a legacy of compassion. The grand opening of Lila's sanctuary became a town-wide celebration. People of all ages gathered to see the completed project, which now housed not only Lila and her puppies, but also other stray animals that had been rescued. The sanctuary was a vibrant, welcoming place with gardens, walking trails, and a small memorial dedicated to Lila. As Clara stood at the podium to thank everyone for their support, she spotted Mr. Hendricks in the crowd. To her surprise, he gave her a small nod of approval. "Thank you all for believing in this dream," Clara said, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "This sanctuary is a testament to what we can accomplish when we choose kindness, and it's a reminder that even in loss, there is a chance for new beginnings." The crowd erupted into applause as Clara stepped down, feeling the weight of her journey lift from her shoulders. As Lila's sanctuary thrived, Clara and Anna began to notice a shift in the dynamics of the community. The sanctuary became more than just a place for animals. It evolved into a hub for human connection, healing, and unexpected stories. However, with this growth came new challenges and opportunities that tested their resolve. One of the most unexpected developments occurred when a group of high school students from the neighboring town approached Clara with an unusual request. Led by a shy but passionate teenager named Jamie, the group wanted to start an after-school program at the sanctuary, focusing on animal care and environmental conservation. "We've seen what you've done here," Jamie explained during their first meeting. "And we think it's the kind of place that could teach kids like us responsibility, empathy, and how to give back to the community." Clara was taken aback by the proposal, but immediately saw its potential. She agreed to the idea, and within weeks, the program was up and running. Every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, the sanctuary buzzed with the laughter and chatter of teenagers, learning how to care for animals, clean enclosures, and even grow plants in the small garden Anna had started. As the program flourished, Jamie confided in Clara about the struggles he and some of his classmates faced at home. For many of the teens, the sanctuary became a refuge, a safe space where they felt valued and understood. Jamie, in particular, formed a deep bond with Lila's youngest puppy, a timid little dog named Scout. "Scout reminds me of myself," Jamie admitted one afternoon as he gently petted the pup. "He's a little scared but full of potential." Clara watched as the pair grew inseparable, and it wasn't long before Jamie made the decision to adopt Scout. The paperwork was filled out, and the day Jamie took Scout home was marked by both tears and celebration. But not everyone was thrilled with the sanctuary's growing influence. One day, Clara received an official letter from a local real estate developer named Martin Grant, who owned several properties in the area. The letter demanded that the sanctuary cease operations immediately, claiming that it violated zoning laws. "This is a quiet, residential area," the letter read. "Your sanctuary has become a public nuisance, attracting crowds and disrupting the neighborhood's peace." Clara felt her stomach churn as she read the letter. She knew Grant's true motives. He had been trying to acquire the land for years to build luxury homes, and the sanctuary was now the only thing standing in his way. Anna was furious when she heard the news. "This isn't about zoning laws," she said, pacing the sanctuary office. "It's about money. He wants to turn this land into another soulless development." Clara nodded, her determination hardening. "We're not going to let him win. This place means too much to too many people." With the help of a pro bono lawyer, Clara and Anna launched a campaign to protect the sanctuary. They gathered testimonies from volunteers, families, and even local businesses that had benefited from the sanctuary's positive impact. Jamie, now a regular face at the sanctuary, became one of their most passionate advocates, sharing his story during a town hall meeting. "This sanctuary saved me," Jamie said, his voice trembling with emotion. "It's not just a place for animals. It's a place for people who need healing, who need hope. If you take it away, you're not just hurting animals, you're hurting our entire community." His words resonated deeply, and the meeting ended with a standing ovation. But the fight was far from over. As the legal battle dragged on, Clara faced moments of doubt. The stress of fundraising, organizing events, and preparing for court hearings took its toll on her. Anna, ever the optimist, encouraged her to keep going, reminding her of why they had started this journey in the first place. One evening, as Clara sat in the sanctuary's garden, Lila approached her and rested her head on Clara's lap. The simple gesture brought tears to Clara's eyes, reminding her that the sanctuary's mission was worth every challenge. Just when things seemed at their darkest, a surprising ally emerged. Mr. Hendricks, the cemetery caretaker who had initially opposed the sanctuary, came forward with an offer of support. "I was wrong about this place," he admitted. "I've seen how much good it's done for the town. If there's anything I can do to help, just let me know." Clara was touched by his change of heart. Together, they organized a fundraiser at the cemetery, turning it into a celebration of the sanctuary's achievements. The event featured live music, storytelling sessions, and a special tribute to Lila and her puppies. The turnout was overwhelming, and by the end of the night, they had raised enough funds to cover their legal fees and expand the sanctuary's facilities. The court case culminated in a tense hearing, with both sides presenting their arguments. In the end, the judge ruled in favor of the sanctuary, citing its positive impact on the community and the overwhelming support it had received. Cheers erupted in the courtroom as Clara and Anna hugged tightly, tears streaming down their faces. Outside, a crowd of supporters waited to celebrate the victory. Jamie held Scout in his arms, his smile wider than Clara had ever seen. "This isn't just a win for us," Clara said as she addressed the crowd. "It's a win for kindness, compassion, and the belief that every life, human or animal, deserves a second chance." With the legal battle behind them, the sanctuary seemed poised to move forward without further obstacles. But as Clara and Anna soon discovered, the fight for Lila's sanctuary wasn't just about external challenges. It was also about navigating the emotional complexities of their growing community. One afternoon, as Clara prepared to meet a potential new volunteer, she found Anna sitting on the front porch, staring off into the distance. Anna's usually cheerful demeanor was replaced with a quiet tension. "Anna, what's wrong?" Clara asked, taking a seat beside her. Anna hesitated before speaking. "I got a call from my sister," she finally said. "She's struggling to care for her kids, and she asked if I could come help her for a while. Maybe a few months." Clara felt her heart sink. Anna had been her rock throughout the sanctuary's journey, and the thought of running things without her was daunting. But she also understood the importance of family. "Of course, you need to be there for her," Clara said, forcing a smile. "We'll manage here. You've built something amazing, Anna, and it's strong enough to keep going even if you're not here for a bit." Anna's eyes welled up with tears. "I hate leaving you, though. This place feels like home." "It will still be home when you're ready to come back," Clara reassured her, hugging her tightly. As Anna prepared to leave, Clara took on more responsibilities at the sanctuary. Without her partner's cheerful energy, the days felt heavier, and the workload seemed endless. Jamie noticed the change and stepped up to help, organizing the after-school program and rallying volunteers to lighten Clara's burden. But not everyone shared Jamie's enthusiasm. A new volunteer, Lisa, had recently joined the sanctuary and quickly began clashing with others. Her intentions seemed genuine. She was passionate about animal welfare, but her approach was abrasive, often leaving the teenagers and other volunteers feeling criticized. One day, Clara found Lisa arguing with Jamie over the proper way to clean an enclosure. Jamie, usually calm and composed, looked visibly frustrated. "Lisa, I know you care about the animals," he said, his voice tight with restraint, "but you can't keep talking to people like this. It's not helping." "They're doing it wrong," Lisa snapped. "If we're going to run this place properly, we need to set higher standards." Clara intervened before the argument could escalate further. "Lisa, can I talk to you for a moment?" In her office, Clara addressed the issue with as much empathy as she could muster. "I appreciate your dedication, Lisa, but we need to create an environment where everyone feels valued. This sanctuary is as much about building a supportive community as it is about caring for animals." Lisa sighed, her shoulders slumping. I just want everything to be perfect. This place is so special and I don't want to see it fail. I understand, Clara said gently, but perfection isn't the goal. Progress is, and we make the most progress when we work together. Meanwhile, Lila, the sanctuary's namesake, seemed to sense the tension in the air. She spent more time by Clara's side, offering silent companionship during late nights of paperwork and planning. One evening, as Clara sat in the office reviewing the sanctuary's finances, Lila nudged her hand with her nose and placed her head on Clara's lap. "You always know when I need a break, don't you?" Clara whispered, stroking Lila's fur. But even Lila's quiet support couldn't shield Clara from the doubts that crept in during moments of exhaustion. Was she doing enough? Could she keep the sanctuary thriving without Anna's help? The weight of responsibility was overwhelming, and for the first time, Clara wondered if she had taken on more than she could handle. A turning point came when Jamie and the teenagers organized a surprise event to lift Clara's spirits. They called it Sanctuary Appreciation Day, and it was a celebration of everything Clara had accomplished. Volunteers decorated the sanctuary with handmade banners, and the teenagers prepared a slideshow showcasing the lives transformed by the sanctuary, both human and animal. As the slideshow played, Clara saw photos of rescued dogs finding their forever homes, teenagers like Jamie discovering their purpose, and families coming together to support the sanctuary's mission. Tears streamed down her face as the crowd erupted into applause. "You've given all of us so much," Jamie said, stepping forward to present Clara with a plaque. "It's time we gave something back." The plaque read, "For Clara, whose heart built a home for hope, healing, and second chances." The event rekindled Clara's resolve, but it also highlighted a lingering question. How could the sanctuary continue to grow sustainably? The influx of new volunteers and animals was a blessing, but it also strained their resources. Clara knew they needed a long-term plan to ensure the sanctuary's future. As she brainstormed ideas, Anna's absence weighed heavily on her. Clara missed her partner's insight and energy, and she often found herself reaching for the phone to call Anna for advice. But each time, she hesitated, not wanting to burden her friend while she cared for her family. One night, as Clara sat in the sanctuary's garden with Lila, she received an unexpected call. It was Anna. "I've been thinking," Anna said. "This place was never just yours or mine, it's ours, and I want to help even if I'm not there." Anna suggested reaching out to local businesses and foundations for sponsorships. "There are so many people out there who want to support causes like ours. We just need to let them know we exist." Inspired by Anna's suggestion, Clara launched a sponsorship campaign, reaching out to potential donors with personalized letters and presentations. To her surprise, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Several local businesses pledged their support, providing the funds needed to expand the sanctuary and hire additional staff. With the sanctuary's recent successes and growing support from the community, it seemed as though things were finally falling into place. Clara's spirits lifted as she watched the sanctuary flourish, thanks to new sponsorships, a steady stream of volunteers, and Anna's continued guidance from afar. But as the sanctuary's profile rose, so did the stakes, and new challenges loomed on the horizon. One morning, as Clara was feeding the animals, she noticed Lila standing unusually still near the garden fence. The dog's ears were perked, and her gaze was fixed on the dense woods just beyond the sanctuary's boundaries. Clara followed Lila's line of sight, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. "Everything okay, girl?" Clara asked, patting Lila's head. The dog didn't respond, her attention unwavering. That afternoon, Clara received an anonymous letter in the mail. The envelope was unmarked, and the letter inside contained a single line, written in blocky, uneven handwriting. "Not everyone in town is happy about your success." Clara's stomach churned as she reread the message. Was this a prank? Or was someone genuinely trying to threaten her? The sanctuary had faced opposition before, but this felt different, more personal. She decided not to share the letter with the volunteers, not wanting to alarm anyone unnecessarily. Over the next few days, small but troubling incidents began to occur. The garden gate, which was always securely latched, was found ajar one morning, allowing some of the animals to wander. Thankfully, Lila had barked loud enough to alert Clara before any harm was done. On another occasion, several bags of donated animal feed were discovered slashed open, their contents spilled onto the ground. Clara tried to stay calm, attributing these events to carelessness or bad luck. But when a series of wooden signs along the sanctuary's walking trail were defaced with crude graffiti, she realized someone was deliberately targeting the sanctuary. Anna, who had been keeping in touch regularly, was livid when Clara told her about the incidents. "You need to report this to the authorities," Anna insisted over the phone. "Whoever's doing this isn't just being petty, they're trying to sabotage you." Clara reluctantly called the local police, who sent an officer to inspect the property. Officer Daniels, a kind but pragmatic man, assured Clara they would look into it but warned her that it might be difficult to catch the culprit without more evidence. "Keep an eye out for anything suspicious," he advised. "And don't hesitate to call us if things escalate." Over the next few days, small but troubling incidents began to occur. The garden gate, which was always securely latched, was found ajar one morning, allowing some of the animals to wander. Thankfully, Lila had barked loud enough to alert Clara before any harm was done. On another occasion, several bags of donated animal feed were discovered slashed open, their contents spilled onto the ground. Clara tried to stay calm, attributing these events to carelessness or bad luck. But when a series of wooden signs along the sanctuary's walking trail were defaced with crude graffiti, she realized someone was deliberately targeting the sanctuary. Anna, who had been keeping in touch regularly, was livid when Clara told her about the incidents. "You need to report this to the authorities," Anna insisted over the phone. "Whoever's doing this isn't just being petty, they're trying to sabotage you." Clara reluctantly called the local police, who sent an officer to inspect the property. Officer Daniels, a kind but pragmatic man, assured Clara they would look into it but warned her that it might be difficult to catch the culprit without more evidence. "Keep an eye out for anything suspicious," he advised. "And don't hesitate to call us if things escalate." Determined not to let fear take over, Clara and the volunteers implemented new security measures. They installed motion-activated lights around the property and set up cameras to monitor key areas. Clara also made sure to keep her phone close at hand, ready to call the police if necessary. One evening, as Clara reviewed the day's footage, she spotted something chilling. A shadowy figure, dressed in dark clothing, appeared briefly near the garden fence before disappearing into the woods. The footage wasn't clear enough to identify the person, but it confirmed what Jamie had seen. Someone was stalking the sanctuary. The breaking point came when Clara received a second anonymous letter. This time it was more explicit: "Shut it down, or you'll regret it." The threat was undeniable, and Clara felt her resolve harden. She wouldn't let anyone intimidate her into abandoning the sanctuary and the animals that depended on it. Clara called a meeting with the volunteers and shared everything that had been happening. The group was understandably shaken, but their commitment to the sanctuary remained unshaken. "This place has given so much to all of us," Jamie said, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "We're not going to let some coward scare us into giving up." As the sanctuary community rallied together, Clara reached out to Officer Daniels again, providing him with the new letter and the footage of the shadowy figure. Daniels assured her that the police were taking the situation seriously and promised to increase patrols in the area. Meanwhile, Anna, who was still helping remotely, suggested hosting a public event to show the community that the sanctuary wouldn't be intimidated. "Make it clear that you're here to stay," she said, "and invite as many people as possible. The more support you have, the harder it'll be for anyone to undermine you." The event, dubbed Sanctuary Unity Day, was scheduled for the following weekend. Volunteers worked tirelessly to prepare, decorating the grounds with colorful banners and organizing activities for families. Clara knew the event was a risk. If the saboteur was among the attendees, it could provide an opportunity for more mischief. But she also believed it was a chance to rally the community and demonstrate the sanctuary's resilience. As the day approached, Clara felt a mix of excitement and unease. Lila, always by her side, seemed more alert than usual, as if sensing the tension in the air. Sanctuary Unity Day dawned with a crisp breeze and clear skies. The grounds buzzed with activity as volunteers set up tables laden with baked goods, handmade crafts, and sanctuary merchandise. Children squealed with delight as they visited the animal pens, while their parents browsed stalls or listened to presentations about the sanctuary's mission. Clara stood near the main entrance, greeting guests with a warm smile and a nervous flutter in her chest. She scanned the crowd for any sign of trouble, but all she saw were smiling faces. Even Lila, ever watchful, seemed to relax, wagging her tail as children approached to pet her. Midway through the event, Clara took the stage to deliver a speech. The crowd gathered around, their curiosity evident as they quieted down. Clara's heart pounded as she adjusted the microphone. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "This sanctuary isn't just a place for animals. It's a place for second chances, for them and for all of us. Every one of you has played a role in making this possible, and I couldn't be more grateful." The crowd erupted in applause, and Clara felt a swell of pride. As she stepped off the stage, a man in a dark jacket caught her eye. He lingered near the edge of the crowd, his face obscured by a baseball cap. Something about his stance made her uneasy, but before she could investigate, Jamie approached her with a group of local reporters eager for interviews. As the day wore on, the event exceeded expectations. Visitors donated generously, and several local businesses pledged their support. Anna called in during the festivities, her voice filled with pride. "You're making waves, Clara," she said. "This is exactly what the sanctuary needed." But amidst the success, the unease lingered. Clara couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. That suspicion was confirmed when one of the volunteers, Ellie, approached her with a furrowed brow. "Clara, I think you should see this," Ellie said, leading her toward the garden area. On one of the decorative signs near the sanctuary's flower beds, someone had scrawled a message in red paint. "You've been warned." Clara's stomach churned as she stared at the graffiti. It was a stark contrast to the joy and camaraderie surrounding the event. Lila stood beside her, growling softly as if sensing the tension. "We'll clean it up before anyone else sees," Ellie offered, her voice shaking slightly. "We can't let this ruin the day." Clara nodded, grateful for Ellie's quick thinking. But the incident reinforced her resolve. Whoever was behind these threats wanted to sow fear and doubt, but Clara refused to let them succeed. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, the event began to wind down. Families trickled out, arms laden with purchases and faces glowing with satisfaction. Clara made a point to thank each guest personally, her gratitude genuine despite the shadow of the day's discovery. When most of the crowd had dispersed, Clara gathered the volunteers for a debrief. Jamie, Ellie, and the others shared their highlights and feedback, their enthusiasm lifting Clara's spirits. But as they wrapped up, Jamie pulled Clara aside. "I noticed someone hanging around near the tool shed earlier," he said. "They didn't look like one of the guests. I tried to approach them, but they slipped away before I could get a good look." Clara felt a chill run down her spine. "Did they do anything?" "Not that I could tell," Jamie replied. "But it's clear someone's trying to rattle us." That night, Clara sat in her small office, reviewing the day's footage from the security cameras. Most of it showed happy families and bustling activity, but one clip made her heart race. The man in the baseball cap appeared again, this time near the tool shed Jamie had mentioned. He stood there for several minutes, looking around as if searching for something, before slipping into the shadows. Clara saved the footage and forwarded it to Officer Daniels, with a note explaining the day's events. She also resolved to strengthen the sanctuary's security measures further, despite the strain it would put on their budget. The following morning, Clara awoke to a text from Daniels. He had reviewed the footage and agreed to increase patrols around the sanctuary. "You're doing amazing work," he wrote. "Don't let this discourage you." Encouraged by his words, Clara threw herself into the day's tasks with renewed determination. She worked alongside the volunteers to clean up after the event, their camaraderie making the work feel less daunting. As they scrubbed away the graffiti and packed up decorations, Clara noticed Lila sniffing around the garden fence. The dog's body was tense, her nose low to the ground. Clara walked over, her brow furrowing. "What is it, girl?" she asked. Lila barked once, then began digging at the base of the fence. Clara crouched down and gasped. Buried beneath a thin layer of soil was a small black object, a motion sensor. Hastily concealed, Clara's mind raced as she stared at the device. It was clear someone had been monitoring the sanctuary's activities. She called Daniels immediately, and he promised to send a technician to examine the sensor. The discovery only deepened the mystery, but Clara refused to let fear take over. She rallied the volunteers, reminding them of the sanctuary's purpose and the lives they were saving every day. "We're stronger than this," Clara said, her voice firm. "Whatever's happening, we'll face it together." As the volunteers nodded in agreement, Clara felt a flicker of hope. The sanctuary was more than just a safe haven for animals. It was a testament to resilience and the power of community. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, Clara was determined to protect it. The discovery of the motion sensor sent ripples of concern throughout the sanctuary team. Clara knew they were dealing with more than idle threats now. Someone was actively monitoring their activities, likely plotting their next move. Yet she refused to show fear. If anything, the challenges only strengthened her resolve to protect the sanctuary and everyone within it. Officer Daniels arrived later that afternoon with a technician to examine the device. Lila stayed by Clara's side, her watchful eyes tracking every movement. "This is professional-grade equipment," the technician said, turning the sensor over in his gloved hands. "Not something you'd pick up at a regular store. Whoever planted this knew what they were doing." Daniels frowned. "Any idea how long it's been here?" The technician nodded. "A few days at most. It's been transmitting data, likely to a nearby receiver." Clara's chest tightened. "So someone has been watching us this whole time?" "It appears so," Daniels replied. "We'll do a sweep of the property to make sure there aren't any more surprises. In the meantime, I suggest doubling your security measures." The revelation cast a shadow over the sanctuary's usual routines. Volunteers worked with a quiet determination, their vigilance heightened. Clara updated the staff on the situation, emphasizing the importance of remaining alert but not panicking. "We're being watched because we're making an impact," Clara said during a meeting. "That means we're doing something right. Let's not give them the satisfaction of seeing us falter." Her words were met with nods of agreement, but the tension lingered. That evening, as Clara reviewed her emails, a message from an anonymous sender caught her eye. The subject line read, "Time's running out." Her hands trembled as she opened it. The message was brief but chilling. "You've been warned. Stop now, or you'll regret it." Clara forwarded the email to Daniels, adding it to the growing list of evidence. But as the night wore on, the weight of the situation pressed heavily on her. She sat with Lila on the front porch, the dog's warmth providing a small comfort. "What do you think, girl?" Clara murmured, scratching Lila's ears. "Am I doing the right thing?" Lila looked up at her with steady eyes, as if to say, "Keep going, don't give up." The following morning, Clara awoke to a commotion outside. A small crowd had gathered near the sanctuary's main gate. Jamie, along with a few volunteers, was attempting to calm them, but their voices carried an edge of frustration. Clara hurried over, her heart sinking as she saw what had caused the uproar. Overnight, someone had vandalized the sanctuary's entrance. The gate was covered in spray-painted slurs and warnings, the words crude and hateful. "Not again," Clara whispered, her stomach churning. Jamie approached her, his face tight with anger. "We found this taped to the gate," he said, handing her a folded piece of paper. The message was scrawled in the same red paint. "Last warning, leave now." Clara called Daniels immediately. When he arrived, he examined the gate and the note with a grim expression. "This is escalating," he said. "Whoever's behind this is trying to scare you into shutting down." Clara squared her shoulders. "It's not going to work." Daniels gave her a measured look. "I admire your determination, but I need you to be realistic. These people might not stop at threats." Clara nodded, her resolve unshaken. "Then we'll be ready for them." The vandalism spurred Clara to take immediate action. She allocated funds to install additional cameras and motion sensors around the property. Jamie volunteered to organize night patrols, ensuring that someone was always keeping watch. The volunteers rallied behind her, their unity a testament to the sanctuary's impact. Ellie, who had initially joined to care for the animals, took on the role of security coordinator. She organized training sessions for the team, teaching them how to handle emergencies and identify potential threats. Despite the tension, Clara found solace in the sanctuary's daily rhythms. The animals, unaware of the turmoil, continued to thrive. Lila, ever the loyal guardian, seemed to sense the heightened stakes, sticking closer to Clara than ever. Days turned into a week, and the sanctuary settled into a wary routine. The threats persisted, but no further incidents occurred. Clara began to hope that whoever was behind the attacks had lost their nerve. That hope was shattered one evening when Jamie burst into the office, his face pale. "Clara, you need to come outside." Now, she followed him to the main paddock, where a small group of volunteers stood in stunned silence. In the center of the enclosure lay a lifeless goat, its body marked with cuts that were clearly deliberate. Clara's heart sank as she approached the scene. Tears stung her eyes, but she forced herself to remain composed. "This was a message," Jamie said quietly. "They're showing us what they're capable of." The act of cruelty sent shockwaves through the sanctuary. Clara called an emergency meeting, her voice trembling but determined. "We're dealing with someone who wants to break us," she said, "but we won't let them. Not now, not ever." The volunteers nodded, their expressions a mix of anger and determination. The sanctuary was more than a job to them. It was a family, and they weren't about to let anyone tear it apart. Clara doubled down on security, installing floodlights and reinforcing the fences. She also worked with Daniels to increase police patrols, ensuring that the sanctuary remained under constant watch. But even as she took these measures, a nagging fear lingered in the back of her mind. The attacks were growing bolder, and she couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. The aftermath of the goat's death left the sanctuary in a state of heightened vigilance. Clara knew the time for reactive measures had passed. It was time to take the fight directly to whoever was targeting them. The deliberate cruelty of the act demanded justice, not just for the sanctuary, but for the trust and love of the volunteers and animals that called it home. Clara gathered her team the next morning, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "This isn't just about us anymore," she began. "The animals, this land, and the community we've built are at stake. We have to take control of this situation." Jamie, ever her trusted ally, nodded firmly. "What's the plan?" Clara outlined a multi-step approach. First, they would partner with local animal welfare organizations to create a united front. The more eyes on the sanctuary, the harder it would be for the perpetrators to operate in the shadows. Second, Clara planned to host a press conference, bringing public attention to the threats they were facing. "We'll tell the world what's happening here," Clara said. "If they want to scare us into silence, we'll do the opposite." The team worked tirelessly over the next few days, reaching out to contacts, organizing the event, and securing the sanctuary's perimeter. Clara even reached out to Anna, her former boss, for advice on handling the media. Anna's response was swift and supportive, offering to attend the press conference in person. Meanwhile, Daniels intensified his investigation. "We're close," he assured Clara during one of his visits. "The evidence is mounting, and it's only a matter of time before we get a break." But time wasn't a luxury Clara felt she had. Each day that passed without an answer heightened the risk of another attack. As the day of the press conference approached, Clara faced resistance from some of the volunteers. Ellie, who had been instrumental in boosting security, expressed her concerns during a late-night strategy session. "Clara, going public like this might provoke them," Ellie said. "What if they retaliate?" Clara took a deep breath, understanding the fear but unwilling to back down. "They're counting on our silence, Ellie. If we let them dictate our actions, they've already won. This is our chance to show them we won't be intimidated." Ellie hesitated but eventually nodded. "You're right. We're with you." The morning of the press conference arrived with a sense of quiet determination. News vans pulled into the sanctuary's lot, their satellite dishes gleaming under the morning sun. Reporters set up cameras near a podium draped with the sanctuary's logo, while volunteers handed out brochures detailing their mission and the recent threats. Clara stood behind the podium, flanked by Lila on one side and Jamie on the other. The sight of Lila, calm and alert, gave Clara a surge of confidence. She took a deep breath and stepped forward as the cameras began to roll. "Thank you all for being here today," Clara began, her voice steady. "What we're facing isn't just an attack on this sanctuary. It's an attack on compassion, on the idea that every life deserves respect and dignity." She detailed the challenges they had faced. from the vandalism to the cruelty inflicted on their animals. She also highlighted the sanctuary's mission, emphasizing the positive impact they had made on the community. "We refuse to let fear define us," Clara concluded, her voice firm. "To those who seek to harm us, know this: we will not back down. This sanctuary is a place of hope and healing, and that's something no amount of hate can destroy." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Local news stations aired the story, and social media buzzed with posts of support. Donations poured in, along with messages of solidarity from people who had faced similar challenges. Clara's words struck a chord, inspiring others to stand up for what they believed in. But not everyone reacted positively. That evening, as Clara reviewed the day's footage in her office, she noticed a suspicious comment on the sanctuary's social media page. "You think this is over? Think again." She forwarded the message to Daniels, who promised to trace its origin. "We're closing in on them," he said. "Just hang tight." 2 nights later, Clara's resolve was put to the ultimate test. The sanctuary's motion sensors triggered an alert at 2 a.m., waking Clara from a fitful sleep. She grabbed her phone and checked the security feed, her heart sinking as she saw several figures moving near the animal pens. Clara didn't hesitate. She called Daniels and then woke Jamie, who had been sleeping in the guest quarters. "They're here," she said, her voice tight with urgency. Jamie grabbed a flashlight and followed her outside, where they found Lila already pacing near the door, growling softly. Clara clipped a leash to Lila's collar for safety and led the way toward the pens. The intruders were dressed in dark clothing, their faces obscured by masks. They had cut through the fence and were attempting to release some of the animals. Clara's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. "Stop right there!" The figures froze, clearly startled. One of them bolted, but the others hesitated, seemingly torn between fight and flight. Before they could decide, the sound of sirens pierced the night air. Daniels and his team arrived within minutes, their headlights illuminating the scene. The intruders scrambled to escape, but the officers quickly apprehended them. Clara watched as they were led away in handcuffs, her heart pounding with a mix of relief and lingering fear. As the officers secured the area, Daniels approached Clara with a reassuring nod. "We've got them," he said, "and with the evidence we've collected, they won't be bothering you again." Clara exhaled deeply, the weight of the past weeks finally beginning to lift. She knelt down to hug Lila, who licked her face as if to say, "We did it." The sanctuary fell silent in the aftermath of the intruders' capture, but the weight of the night's events hung heavy in the air. Clara stood at the edge of the paddock, watching the police vehicles disappear down the gravel road, their red and blue lights fading into the distance. Lila sat at her side, her posture vigilant, as if still guarding against unseen threats. Daniels approached Clara, clipboard in hand. "We've identified the suspects," he said. "Local troublemakers, but one of them has ties to a larger group known for targeting organizations like yours." Clara's stomach tightened. "What does that mean? Are they part of some network?" Daniels nodded grimly. "It's possible. These groups thrive on fear and division. But the good news is, with their arrest, we've disrupted their operations in this area. It's a significant blow." Clara absorbed his words, relief tempered by a lingering sense of unease. "So it's over." "For now," Daniels replied. "But you've made enemies, Clara. You need to stay vigilant." The volunteers gathered in the sanctuary's main hall the next morning, their faces etched with exhaustion and resolve. Clara stood at the front, her voice steady but soft as she addressed them. "What happened last night was a reminder of the challenges we face," she began. "But it's also proof of our strength. We stood together, and because of that, we're still here." Jamie raised his hand. "What about the animals they tried to release? Are they okay?" "They're fine," Clara assured him. "Thanks to you all and the security measures we put in place." A ripple of relief passed through the room, but the tension was still palpable. Clara looked around at the faces of her team, searching for the right words to inspire them. "We've been tested," she said, "and we've proven that this sanctuary is more than just a place. It's a symbol of hope, resilience, and the belief that every life matters. That's what we're fighting for." The days that followed were a blur of activity. Clara worked closely with Daniels to tighten security further, while Jamie and Ellie organized shifts to ensure the sanctuary was never left unguarded. Volunteers showed up in greater numbers than ever, determined to protect the sanctuary and its mission. Meanwhile, the story of the attempted attack spread through local and national media. Clara's press conference, coupled with the news of the arrests, brought an outpouring of support from around the country. Donations surged, along with messages of encouragement from people inspired by the sanctuary's resilience. One letter, handwritten on lined paper, stood out to Clara. It was from a young girl named Emily in a small town across the country. "Dear Clara," it read, "I saw your story on the news. I think what you're doing is really brave. My dog, Rusty, was rescued from a shelter, and he's my best friend. Thank you for saving animals like him. I hope I can visit your sanctuary one day. Love, Emily." Clara held the letter to her chest, tears welling in her eyes. It was a reminder of why she had started the sanctuary in the first place, and why she would never give up. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Clara found herself walking along the sanctuary's perimeter with Lila. The dog's ears perked up at the sound of rustling leaves, but she quickly relaxed when a deer emerged from the woods, its delicate frame silhouetted against the fading light. Clara smiled, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in weeks. She knelt down beside Lila, running her fingers through the dog's fur. "We did it, girl," she whispered. "We made it through." Lila wagged her tail, her eyes full of trust and loyalty. In that moment, Clara felt an unspoken bond with the dog, a connection born of shared struggles and triumphs. The sanctuary's first major event following the attack was a community open house. Clara and the volunteers worked tirelessly to prepare, transforming the grounds into a welcoming space filled with informational booths, animal interaction areas, and even a small stage for guest speakers. Families arrived in droves, their laughter and chatter filling the air. Children crowded around the petting area, their faces lighting up as they fed carrots to goats and brushed the sanctuary's resident ponies. Adults mingled near the booths, learning about the sanctuary's mission and how they could get involved. Clara stood near the entrance, greeting visitors with a warm smile. It was a stark contrast to the fear and tension that had gripped the sanctuary just days earlier. Seeing the community come together in support of the sanctuary was a powerful reminder of the good that could emerge from adversity. As the event wound down, Clara took the stage to thank everyone for their support. She spoke of the challenges they had faced and the resilience that had carried them through. "This sanctuary exists because of people like you," she said, her voice steady, "people who believe in kindness, compassion, and the power of community. Together, we've proven that no obstacle is too great when we stand united." Her words were met with applause, and Clara felt a swell of pride and gratitude. The sanctuary had weathered the storm, emerging stronger and more determined than ever. Later that night, as Clara locked up the office, she paused to look out at the sanctuary's grounds. The moon cast a silvery glow over the paddocks, and the faint sound of animals stirring in their enclosures reached her ears. Clara smiled, her heart full. The sanctuary was more than just a refuge for animals. It was a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the unbreakable bond between people and the creatures they cared for. As the sanctuary settled back into its routine, Clara felt a growing sense of accomplishment. The community open house had not only boosted morale, but also solidified the sanctuary's place as a vital part of the town. The surge in donations had allowed for much-needed upgrades to the facilities, and Clara knew they were stronger than ever. But a week later, an unexpected letter arrived at the sanctuary. The envelope was plain, bearing no return address, but the contents made Clara's heart race. The letter was from the prosecutor handling the intruder's case. Inside was a note explaining that, during the investigation, a diary had been found in one of the suspects' belongings. The diary contained detailed entries about their motivations and a chilling revelation. One entry stood out: "The sanctuary is more than just a refuge for animals. Clara and her team are making us look bad by comparison. If we can't stop her, we'll lose everything." Clara read the words twice, her hands trembling. It wasn't just a random attack. This was deliberate sabotage, fueled by jealousy and fear of what the sanctuary represented. The truth hit her like a wave. The sanctuary's success had become a threat to those who thrived on exploitation and cruelty. She shared the letter with Daniels, who nodded grimly. "This isn't uncommon," he said. "Your work challenges their way of life. But knowing this gives us an advantage. We'll ensure they don't get another chance." Meanwhile, news of the investigation's findings spread, further galvanizing the community. Local leaders, once indifferent to the sanctuary's efforts, now openly supported Clara and her team. A town meeting was organized, where residents expressed their outrage over the targeted attack. Standing before a packed auditorium, Clara addressed the crowd. "This sanctuary was built on the belief that compassion can change the world," she said. "What happened to us is a reminder of the challenges we face when we stand for what's right. But we won't back down." Her words were met with thunderous applause, and Clara felt a renewed sense of purpose. The sanctuary wasn't just about saving animals anymore. It was about standing up for kindness in a world that often chose convenience over care. One evening, Clara walked to the paddock where Lila was resting. The dog looked up, her eyes filled with the quiet wisdom that had always comforted Clara. "You've been through so much, haven't you, girl?" Clara said, kneeling beside her. "And yet, you never stop fighting." As if understanding her words, Lila nudged Clara's hand with her nose. In that moment, Clara realized that Lila wasn't just the sanctuary's protector, she was its heart. The dog's resilience mirrored everything the sanctuary stood for: strength, loyalty, and the unwavering belief that every life mattered. The sanctuary's transformation reached its peak with the construction of a new wing dedicated to the animals rescued during the attempted attack. Named Lila's Haven in honor of the courageous dog, the facility featured state-of-the-art enclosures, a veterinary clinic, and interactive spaces where visitors could learn about animal welfare. On opening day, Clara stood beside Lila as they cut the ceremonial ribbon. Children cheered, families explored the new facilities, and volunteers shared stories of their work at the sanctuary. Clara watched as Lila basked in the attention, her tail wagging with pride. A reporter approached Clara, microphone in hand. "What's next for the sanctuary?" they asked. Clara smiled, her gaze drifting to Lila. "We'll keep fighting," she said. "For the animals, for the people who believe in us, and for every life that deserves a second chance." That night, as the last visitors left and the sanctuary grew quiet, Clara sat on the porch of the main building, Lila by her side. The stars shone brightly overhead, casting a serene glow over the sanctuary. "I think we did good today," Clara murmured, scratching behind Lila's ears. The dog sighed contentedly, her head resting on Clara's lap. In the distance, the faint sound of laughter echoed from the volunteer cabins, a reminder that the sanctuary wasn't just a place, it was a home, a community, and a beacon of hope. The sanctuary had faced its greatest challenge and emerged stronger, thanks to the resilience of its people and the unwavering loyalty of a dog who refused to give up. Clara knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she also knew they were ready for whatever came next. Because at the heart of it all was a simple truth: when compassion leads the way, even the darkest nights can give way to a brighter dawn. Months passed, and life at the sanctuary found a steady rhythm. The events of the attack had left their mark, but the sanctuary had not only survived, it had flourished. Clara often marveled at how a place born out of heartbreak had become a beacon of hope for so many. One crisp autumn morning, Clara walked along the sanctuary's grounds, her boots crunching against the fallen leaves. The air was filled with the soft hum of activity, volunteers preparing meals, children laughing during educational tours, and the occasional bark from the kennels. Lila trotted beside her, ever watchful, her golden coat gleaming in the sunlight. Clara paused by the new wing, Lila's Haven, and smiled as a group of visitors gathered around the interactive exhibits. A young girl knelt by a pen, gently stroking a goat's nose while her mother snapped a photo. "Excuse me," a voice called out. Clara turned to see an elderly man with kind eyes and a wide-brimmed hat. "I just wanted to thank you for what you've built here. It's remarkable." Clara nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you for visiting. Every person who comes here is part of what makes it special." Inside the main office, Clara found Jamie sorting through stacks of letters. "More donations," he said, his tone a mix of astonishment and delight. "People keep writing to tell us how inspired they are." Clara picked up a letter, her fingers brushing against the neat handwriting. It was from a man in another state who had started his own small rescue after hearing their story. Another envelope contained a check with a note. "For the animals, keep doing what you're doing." Jamie grinned. "It looks like you're making a real difference, boss." Clara laughed softly. "We're making a difference, Jamie. All of us." Later that week, Clara hosted a staff meeting under the sanctuary's sprawling oak tree. Volunteers and employees gathered in a loose circle, sipping hot cider and sharing updates. Ellie spoke about the success of the educational programs, while Jamie outlined plans for a winter fundraiser. As the discussion wound down, Clara stood, her gaze sweeping over the group. "I just want to say how proud I am of all of you," she began. "This sanctuary isn't just a refuge for animals, it's a reflection of the kindness and dedication each of you brings here every day." Applause rippled through the group, and Clara felt a surge of emotion. The sanctuary wasn't just hers anymore, it belonged to everyone who had poured their heart into its mission. That evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Clara sat on the porch of her small cottage overlooking the sanctuary. Lila lay at her feet, her tail thumping lazily against the wooden planks. Clara held a mug of tea in her hands, the steam curling into the cool air. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the challenges, the heartbreak, and the triumphs. Every hurdle had been worth it to create a place where life could thrive, and where every being, human or animal, could find love and acceptance. The sanctuary had grown beyond what Clara had ever imagined, but its heart remained the same. It was a place where second chances were given freely, where compassion triumphed over cruelty, and where the bond between humans and animals was celebrated every day. As the first stars began to twinkle in the sky, Clara reached down to scratch Lila's ears. "We did good, didn't we, girl?" Lila lifted her head, her eyes soft and knowing. Clara smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace. And in the quiet of the night, with the sanctuary's gentle hum of life all around her, Clara knew they had built something extraordinary, something that would endure for years to come. If this heartwarming story touched your heart, don't forget to like and share it with someone who loves animals as much as you do. What would you have done if you were in Clara's shoes? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe for more inspiring tales of resilience and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. And don't miss our next video, another unforgettable story of courage and compassion. Click now, and let's continue this journey together.